Hey, I'm Jeffrey Pepper Rogers here for acoustic guitar with a lesson on efficiency. This is a really important part of good technique, learning how to achieve the sounds that you want with the least amount of movement and effort. And the faster you play, the more important efficiency becomes. What might be a small stumble in a chord change at a slow tempo becomes a big bump at a fast tempo. But even at a slow tempo, efficiency really pays off because it helps you play more musically. The less time you spend on setup and transition, the more the notes can connect and ring. So this lesson focuses specifically on efficiency in the fretting hand when you're playing chord sequences. Finding smart ways to finger chords and transition between them makes a huge difference in the sound of accompaniment. So I'm going to play through a series of exercises that use progressions from fiddle tunes, bluegrass, rock, all of which make speedy changes primarily with open chords. So it's a bit of a rhythm workout, but the idea here is to work less. So let's get started. This first example is drawn from the fiddle tune Bill Cheatham, specifically the B section, which rolls really fast through the 1, 4, and 5 chords. So I'm playing it here in the key of G, which is pretty much the default key for bluegrass guitar. But fiddlers typically play this in A, so if you want to match that key, just capo up at the 2nd fret. But before we play that, for comparison's sake, try this little example using these exact fingerings I'm doing here. For G, use your middle, index, and your ring, and then standard C and D shapes. Example 1. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. You may have noticed that those fingerings have you kind of scrambling over the fingerboard from here to here to here and back. With all that moving around, it's hard when you start playing fast to stay in time, let alone to play cleanly. So now try that B section of Bill Cheatham, but instead of a regular G major like we were using in the last example, play a G5 like this. So fretting the 2nd string at the 3rd fret, and I'm muting the 5th string just by leaning my middle finger against it here. And those 2 notes on top, I'm just going to leave those fingers in place for the other chords. So on the C, I'm going to play it like this. That actually turns the C into a C sus 2. And here's the D. That's actually a D sus 4. So having those notes on top not only sounds good, but it means that my hand's just staying anchored the whole time, and all I have to do is move my index and middle fingers underneath. It's very efficient compared to the way those fingerings worked in the last example. Example 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the next example is also in the realm of bluegrass and is inspired by the classic Rocky Top. Again, playing in the key of G, but this time it's a different G fingering. So I'm going to use my ring and pinky fingers and leave the 2nd string open this time. And the main reason for that is for a smooth and easy change from there to C and back. Also in this example, use just chord voicings on the low strings for E minor and for D over F sharp. For the D, I'm just going to play that. I'm not even going to play the top strings at all. Again, if you look at that fingering, I'm moving very little, just moving each of my fingers over 1 string. You could certainly play more strings or notes with these chords, but keeping them simpler and more contained works better in this context. You know, it gets the job done, it establishes the harmony, but without a lot of extra effort that will slow you down. Here is example 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. The next example is based on the chorus of Rocky Top. So here, use this F over C fingering. You can see if you're going from that to C, how little I'm actually moving my fingers there. And same thing with F over C, going between that and G. Very easy motion compared with if I was using full bar chord fingerings for F, for instance. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. The next example is inspired by the Outlaws Southern rock jam, Green Grass and High Tides. So you got to be nimble to get through these changes at a really fast tempo. So you can make life easier for yourself by simplifying the fingerings. For G, D5, A5, just going to use one fretting finger. Also with go between E minor and C. If I finger the E minor this way with my index and middle, and when I go to C, I can just keep my middle finger planted at the same string, same fret. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's an example with changes similar to the Everly Brothers song, Wake Up Little Susie. So this is in D with quick strums on the F and G. So I'm going to use, rather than an F bar chord, I'm going to use that F over C again, and then slide it up to 2 frets to get a G over D. Those inversions of those chords sound full, but they make the fingerings just easier to grab quickly and move between than if I was using full bar chord shapes. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and. Several of the earlier examples have used 5 chords, power chords, which are stripped down to only 2 notes, the root and the 5th. So the next example uses a lot more power chords in rhythm patterns inspired by the Who's Pinball Wizard. So in this next example, for B, a B5, it's a power chord. You use a 3rd finger bar for that shape, and then for A5, I'm going to use an index finger bar. From there, it's a very small move to play this D5. Right there. And then if I'm going from there to the E, I'm just sliding my index finger down a fret to play an E. So that's called using a guide finger there. Anytime you can do this, it's a great thing to do. You have one finger that stays on the same string or at the same fret. It can help to guide the other ones into place quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4. This next example starts with a little different E fingering, like this, where I'm not using my index finger at all. So the reason why I'm doing it that way is because of the next chord, which is an F sharp. So if I play an E like this, then I can just slide it up, add the bar, and there's my F sharp. And I like the smoothness of that change compared with reshuffling my fingers into a totally different shape for those 2 chords. 1, 2, 3, 4. Finally, for some extra practice with quick chord changes, try taking that Bill Cheatham chord progression and playing through it in other open keys, namely A, C, D, and E. So find the 1, 4, and 5 and look for fingerings that provide the most efficient path through the progression. So here's a little sample to get you started. This is the way I would play that in the key of A using these fingerings. So when I'm using the shapes this way, my index finger is on the 3rd fret on the 3rd string the whole time, and just makes one little move down 1 fret when I go to the E. But that's my anchor and my guide during the whole progression. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. As you work on other songs, if you find that there's a particular change that's tripping you up, think about alternative ways to finger or maybe reduce the chords. Often the solution is not to push yourself over an obstacle, but to just remove it by playing smarter, not harder. Once again, for acoustic guitar, I'm Jeffrey Pepper Rogers. Thanks for watching.